Okay, Chair, I can confirm that the meeting is now being live streamed and recorded, so over to you.
Thanks, Sue. Good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual LED monitoring forum meeting on the 23rd of November 2021. I am your chair, Councillor Sam Hall, and I'd like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. I'd like to remind you that the council recently delegated much decision making to until the 17th of January 2022 due to concerns around COVID. Consequently, this will be a consultation only. We will adhere as much as possible to procedural rules detailed in the Constitution. However, where the meeting would have normally decided a matter, it will now make a recommendation to the senior officer. The officer will then take the recommendation into account when making their decision. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove, disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn all telephone devices off or to silent, and in the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand, wait to be called, and we will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of forum members here present.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Arnott.
Present, but Chair, I have to leave at 20 to 4, with apologies. Thank you.
Councillor Dent. Councillor Desarum.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Hayward. Councillor Hookway. Councillor Loudon. Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Councillor Pook. Councillor Rowland.
Present, thanks, Sue.
Thank you. Okay, I think those are the forum members, Chair. Over to you.
Thanks, Sue. And then on to our agenda. So agenda item 1, public speaking. There are no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has an issue on the minutes of the 14th of September 2021, please raise your electronic hand. Councillor Desarum, please.
Yeah, just very quickly, I wanted to raise a couple of quick points, Chair. I note that the debate, we talked about the Exmouth Tennis Centre and we suggested that usage would pick up later in the winter. Hopefully, we may have an update on that, I presume, at item 15. And also, I was going to comment, and I appreciate that a lot of Part B items are because of financial or business affairs, but I would hope that whenever possible, when we prepare the agenda, that we could try and, for openness and transparency, as often as possible, try and get as many items of documents into the Part A section of the meeting, because obviously the public may wish to read them. I mean, I note, for example, there's the expert pavilion topic that will come up in Part B, and I know that there's, obviously I appreciate, I'm not suggesting we open the meeting up to sensitive information, but I'm just thinking that wherever possible, we could strive to make the public be able to read as much as possible without having to, to go into the Part B. And that was my only comments on it. And thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. And it's a very valid point around the Part A, Part B point. Ironically, we did have that conversation yesterday, and you'll appreciate that there are some sensitive figures for LED there, but we have discussed around where we can amend those documents to make sure they still add value, but be able to move where appropriate into Part A. And obviously the team are going to be on top of that, I think, where they can be. But otherwise, are members happy to note those? I don't see any hands up, and so I'll take those as noted. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is apologies. Sue, have we received any apologies, please?
I haven't received any, Chair, no.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. To start with, I'll just ask those members who would like to disclose themselves a personal interest and they are a member of LEDs, please raise their hand to save Sue going through a lengthy list, please. See, we've got councillors Arnott, Miller and Young onto that. And then can I ask members to raise their hand if they have any supplementary declarations they wish to make at this time, please? That'll be none. Thank you, everybody. On to agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency. And agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There are 4 items which officers recommend should be dealt with in this way, and we will come to them when we get there. Agenda item 7, nominations for vice chair of the forum. That's a request by myself to ensure that if my internet ever does go down, that we can still function. I'd like to now request nominations for this role. So Councillor Desaran, please.
Yes, although he's not present, I'd like to nominate Councillor Alan Dent because as many members be aware, he does put forward an alternative age group usage within the LED forum as he's an LED member, and he does produce good reports about what he's been trying to do on his bicycle, etc. So for that reason, based on the fact that he has the upper age experience, I would put him forward, but obviously I would wait for other thoughts for others to come forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I believe I'm allowed to seek multiple nominations, so correct me if I'm wrong on that point. Councillor Arnott?
Yes, thank you. Briefly, and if for no other reason than because of his youth rather than his age, I'd like to nominate Councillor Paul Miller as Vice Chair. Thank you. There are plenty of other, but at the same time.
Thank you. We have 2 nominations. Do either of those nominations have a seconder, please? Councillor Young?
Yes, I nominate Paul Miller. Or I second it. Yeah.
No worries. And I don't believe we've got nominations or seconders, whatever the right word is. On that basis, then, are we happy? Can we take a vote, please, on the recommendation for Councillor Paul Miller to be the Vice Chair of the forum? I believe we can just do that by straightforward ticks and crosses.
You can. For the benefit of those watching, we're taking a vote now. Chair, I've got, it's just changed, 4 votes in favour and 1 abstention. Oh, back to 5. Sorry.
Sorry, my screen is going weird.
Cheers, Jack. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Yeah, we've got 5 votes in favour.
That's great, thank you. On to agenda item 8 is the EDDC Leisure and Built Facility Strategy Work Scope. And Charlie, this is your report to present, please.
Thanks, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome and introduce Rachel Fowler from Strategic Leisure. The contract, I'm pleased to say, has been let for the Leisure and Built Facility Strategy, and the work is underway. So we're on track for the timeline that we set ourselves as a forum 3 or 4 months ago, following up on the diagnostic work. So that's good news. And I know Strategic Leisure have already started looking at carrying out a series of site audits on existing indoor leisure facilities. So I wonder if Rachel, Chair, with your indulgence, I can ask Rachel just to do a very brief update on the work that's carrying on at the moment and what they've got planned over the next few months.
Yes, please, Rachel.
Yeah,
Great.
okay.
Yes.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I apologise. I'm out of the office today, so I'm just in a kind of shared working space in London. So I'll be really brief. And first of all, Liz sends her apologies. She's actually on holiday at the moment, so that's why I'm here. But we've started the audits. So myself and Liz were down 2 weeks ago. We covered a huge number of the indoor facilities, and another colleague who's working with us will be finishing those this week. And that will give us the quality of existing facilities. So we have visited all facilities that we could get into, not just LED facilities, so that will give us a picture right across East Devon. I think it's important to mention, Chair, that we are also picking up all-weather pitches as part of this audit. That was following a discussion, a previous discussion, and Sport England have also been involved in that decision. The reason for doing it is because there are all-weather pitches on the joint use centres. So we will do that work, we'll do the assessment and analysis, and then we'll share that with planning colleagues at the council so that they can also reflect that detail in the playing pitch strategy. So you'll have it twice so that both documents talk to each other. But we felt that it was going to be a bit of a gap if we didn't cover it, because some of them are in need of investment, and obviously, as I said, they're linked to the dual use sites, which we're covering as part of this work. So also, just to give members an update, we have started to pull together a list of stakeholders, and we'll be setting up meetings with them. The surveys are drafted and have started to go out to schools, clubs, and also parish and town councils. We've also started speaking to national governing bodies, and we've had some discussions with consultants who are doing the planning work over at Cranbrook, just to make sure that we're clear about what they're doing so that we can link into, you know, that piece of that work as well. We've also, which is really good news, had an email yesterday back from Active Devon, so we'll be setting up a meeting with them next week. And some of you will remember that they didn't actually come back to us on as part of the SOPG diagnostic work, so we're really glad to be engaging with them kind of up front. So yeah, I think that's where we are at the moment. So we'll be continuing that work over the next few weeks. I'm happy to come back and give you regular updates, but as Charlie said, we're on track to achieve the timeline that was set out for you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rachel. Charlie.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rachel. Just say we've invited Matt here, Matt Dickens, Planning Policy Manager, again following a previous conversation about how the playing pitch strategy review work is synergising with the leisure and built facility strategy. I know, Matt, thank you very much for coming at short notice. We'll be happy to take any specific queries or questions on that specific issue if there are any from the forum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to pause for a second because I don't see any hands and I was a bit surprised. If there are, John Golding, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I'm looking through the scope of the exercise in the report, and at the risk of being a bit of a stuck record, can I just ask whether Rachel is factoring in climate change considerations to the work that she's undertaking on the existing built facilities?
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can I also say, Rachel, I don't know if you know, but your camera phone is on, so we're doing an ear examination at the moment. I don't know if you want us to do that. Yeah, okay, sorry, thank you. Sorry, John, sorry, Chair.
I do apologise. It's just because I'm in a shared space. I don't want to have the sound up too loud here, so I don't disturb everyone else, but apologies for that. In terms of the carbon neutral and the climate change agenda, yes, we will be taking it into account. Obviously, we're not doing intrusive surveys when we go around and do the audits, but what we will be doing is coming back to members and saying, well, actually, if you're looking at an ageing facility that is having X amount of impact on the environment, and if it's when we've done the supply and demand analysis, if we think that there is a case for investment or a change in what you're providing now, that's where the benefits of green energy, if you like, and the kind of technology that can go into newer facilities will come in. I'm not by any means saying that we're going to come back and recommend that you have all new facilities, but that's really the place where we'll be able to take that into account. Does that help, Councillor?
John,
Yeah, that's the right answer. Thank you very much.
Okay,
excellent.
thank you. And can I just say, apologies, I forgot to mention this, but we would like to do some workshops with members as soon as we can, really, just to get your views on kind of vision and objectives for the strategy and what you see as the local priorities. So we'll be working with Charlie to set those up over the next few weeks.
Excellent. I think that'll be a really good thing to get rolling forward. Councillor Desaran, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, Chair. My very quick question was, I noticed it says on page 8 there'll be a Commission on National Facility Planning for swimming and sports halls. Have we got any timelines for this, given the fact that it says once the local plan review is completed and the outcomes for housing are known? Is there, do the two have to go together, or can we sort of do it as soon as we get the local plan? That's what I wanted to know. Is there any specific timescales that we would indicate would happen, please, Rachel?
Thanks. Rachel,
okay, on the facility planning model, so what we're suggesting is that we get what's called a national run done first councillor, which will give us a baseline position for East Devon at the moment. In other words, against your current population, a comparison with your existing level and nature of facility provision. And then we'll be working with Sport England to translate that data forward and come up with some specific scenarios that we might want to model. So just to give you an illustration of that, and I don't want to set any hairs running, so please, this is only an example. What happens if you close X facility and you build a new one, particularly in areas of huge housing development? And we would like to work with members to come up with those scenarios, and also using the data as the local plan advances before we run those scenarios, because if we run them now, we're not going to be running them on the right data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's actually quite sensible to get the right data. I quite get what you're saying. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to run a bespoke run will take probably about 3 months, and the national run will be run next year when we can run it on 2021 data. If we ran it right now, we'd be running it on 2019 data because there wasn't a run done during the COVID period. So, you know, it just means reshuffling kind of our work order really, but it's fine to do it next year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rachel, as well. I sympathise with you at the moment, looking at your location at the moment, what you're trying to do. I'm sorry if this is a slightly silly question, but because of the work that you're undertaking at the moment and the number of sites that are involved and just the distances, just looking at the first bullet point where it says undertake site visits to all East Devon leisure facilities and other main providers, and undertake quantitative and qualitative site visits, site audits, I beg your pardon. Is that all encapsulated in this initial work that you're doing in the timescale that you spoke about? I think you're on mute.
Yes, Councillor, it is. So all of the facilities in the district, and basically Liz and myself and the colleague.
Sorry, Rachel, you're getting a bit choppy now.
Them between us. So sorry.
You were getting a bit choppy then. I think we missed some of what you were saying.
Okay, so what we've done is we've taken a list of all the facilities in East Devon, we've divided them up between the three of us, and we've then organised site visits. So we visited each facility, and then we have to fill in like a qualitative assessment of each facility, which looks at what facilities are in there, the age of it, what condition they're in, you know, is it well signposted, is it on a public transport route, that kind of thing, what's the level of car parking. And we will then put all of those separate assessments together as an appendix to the report. So yes, it is achievable. I mean, we're well on with it. It should be finished by the end of this week, if not the beginning of next week.
Thank you.
Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Matt Dickens, and thanks, Matt, for coming along at such short notice. My question is regarding the relationship between the playing pitch strategy and the leisure strategy, and I wanted to first ask how it was decided that this would be a separate element of work by the planning policy team. I also wanted to put my view out there that I know Sport England's advice has been that it should actually be done by an outside specialist body. And my view on that is that there is potential merit for that because of the previous strategy having been a basically just an audit with some vague suggestions of improvements, but no real strategic aims, no real way of measuring progress throughout the strategy. And in Exmouth, we've seen that actually from the beginning of the 2015 playing pitch strategy to the one that's just ended, we have fewer playing pitches than when the strategy was made. So it's actually gone in the wrong direction. So I just wanted to, just to re-emphasize what I'm asking. It's when was it decided that this would be done exclusively by the planning policy team, if I'm correct in saying that? And personally, I would like to see us, if Sport England are advising us, to do it differently, just to assess that in terms of how much that would cost. Obviously, I understand that the council's under some financial pressures, but also just to see whether the planning policy team are looking to do it in a different way, if it is the case that that matter's already been decided. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for joining us at late notice. So
that's fine. Okay, so the first question, why is it being done by the planning policy team? Well, I suppose really it's partly an historic legacy matter. So that the previous strategy was done by the planning policy team, and that was through discussion with Sport England. And in a very real sense, we're just rolling that forward. Certainly, we had representation from Sport England advising of the need for a playing pitch strategy to support the local plan. So that was also part of the context for that. The intention is that it's a piece of work that is owned across the council, although because it's so critical for our work, that's really why we were taking the lead on this. I think turning to Sports England, my take on Sport England was that they were broadly happy with the previous playing pitch strategy. I think one of the challenges we face is the technical assessment of pitches more than anything else, and that is where we might otherwise look to buy in some professional help or support. So there's an element there. But I think the other thing to say is that one of the challenges with the current playing pitch strategy is getting partnership involvement in terms of implementing schemes and initiatives. So there are various projects highlighted in the strategy. And I think perhaps the challenge is whether those have really been carried forward, not whether they exist in the first place. But I do take the point about some of the issues that have been faced by sports pitches and some of the losses, but there have also been some gains that I'm aware of.
Matt, Councillor, are you happy with those?
Yeah, thank you. I was just unclear about what Sport England's advice actually was. Thanks very much, Matt, for making that clear.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just really wanted to follow on from what Councillor Miller has said. I fully support what Councillor Miller has said, and I thank Matt Dickens for his qualification on that. But will you, I mean, I was interested when you said that the technical side of looking at pitches, will you then use Sport England to assist you with that?
Part of my workload is to go back to Sport England and have a discussion with them about that, a further discussion. So we've had preliminary discussions, but I think there's a follow-on piece of conversation to be had there.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. I can't see any more hands. So on that basis, then I will, for experience, move from the recommendation in the report that we recommend to Cabinet approve the scope of work for producing the leisure strategy and built facilities evidence base as detailed in the report. Happy with that, please use a green tick. If you're unhappy, red cross, and if you choose not to vote, then with a hand. Thank you. I think that's unanimous, isn't it, Sue?
Yes, I've got 6 votes in favour, Chair.
Lovely. On to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 9, the LED Community Engagement Programme. Peter, did you want to add anything as by way of introduction, or?
Have I muted myself? No, I think we reported a couple of meetings ago on all the work that's being done by our community engagement and outreach team. And I think we agreed that we would provide a quarterly update of all the work that's going on, and I'm sure this is something that Rachel, who's just disappeared, will be incorporating in the leisure strategy, because I do feel that probably what's going to come out of the leisure strategy is a broader look at LED's role in both community and social engagement and health engagement as well. But yeah, this is a report for information. I'm happy to take any questions. Oh, and Jamie Bryant is here as well, my Director of Delivery, who works with this team more closely than me. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Am I correct in thinking this is the work that was undertaken by the sort of ring-fenced 50K in the fee talking?
That's correct, yes. So this is what our community engagement team do for your 50K.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Saran, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting report, Peter. I think it covers a wide range of things. And I just wondered, from that list that you've got, beginning physical activity and ending frailty and falls, are you in a position to sort of prioritise that as being of key importance, which would actually help us when we come to allocate any form of plan as to how we should look at sport in this particular these particular activities, since obviously some areas are of greater importance than other areas?
As I say, I think it'll be quite interesting when the leisure strategy comes out, and this is something. It's a shame Rachel's just disappeared. I know she had to, but I think I could turn that around and say, I think there's a dialogue that we need, and for LED to talk to you, the council, and say, what are your priorities? Because we need to understand what will come out of your leisure strategy as your leisure priorities. And I know Charlie has also got working alongside a sort of cultural strategy, and there might be some overlaps with some of the cultural activities, remembering that we run the Exmouth Pavilion. And also, as I mentioned just now, John Golding has got a health plan. Sorry, John, that's probably not the right term for it. And again, we need to be linking in with the health agenda and your priorities for health and well-being, and whether that's for target groups of people or whether it's for geographic areas where there's deprivation. So I think there's an awful lot of dialogue to come, which I'm looking forward to try to pull all this together into a strategy which incorporates health and well-being, culture, as well as leisure and sport, and works with you as a council to help us prioritise that.
Thank you very much, Peter. That was very helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you, Peter. I think that's really good, actually. That list is probably quite a two-way street, and we need to think as members as well, what are our priorities? As I think we're going to have that thought many a time in the next few years. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question, it's really an observation, because when I read through what's being covered in this, the irony wasn't lost on me, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Many councillors that are here today may recall a business plan that was put forward over 2 years ago now. I find it difficult to believe it was that long ago already, where we were looking about taking over and using the empty space in Seaton Hospital, and using East Devon to actually help with the purchase of that, but then transfer it straight away over to a charity organisation to be set up. And when I read through our business plan, almost word for word, what's contained in this report could have been lifted from our business plan. And at the time, our business proposal was turned down on the basis that East Devon should not be getting involved in anything to do with healthcare provision. So I do find it slightly ironic now I'm reading this to see what's happening, because I totally support what's happening, but the irony is not lost on me about what we were trying to achieve over 2 years ago. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to endorse everything that Councillor Rowland said. That was a missed opportunity for the council 2 years ago, and he'll know that I supported everything that he was doing on it. And I think I can see the irony too. It's a good report, and I just wanted to highlight as well, obviously it's for members to discuss further what our priorities are, but one priority will be the excellent work that Councillor Armstrong's doing and her poverty working panel on our new anti-poverty strategy. And I would anticipate that will be that the community engagement programme will be linking into that as much as the public health strategy. So I just wanted to put that on Peter's agenda, that we've now created an anti-poverty strategy as a council, one of the few councils in Devon, or certainly the Southwest, that has created one. So it would be good to see how this evolves. Thank you.
Thank you. As a report, I think it was only for us to note. So I think we're happy to move on to the next item. Which
Chair, sorry to jump in. I saw Bridget waving frantically on screen.
Sorry.
I think she wants to come in.
Go for it.
No, just very briefly, just to say, when I met with the outreach team, when we were talking about budgets, so everything that they spend from your specific fund is linked to your health and wellbeing strategy, which is already published. So you will find when that comes back at the end of the year, it is directly linked to what you've already published. And there may be other areas you want to go into in more detail, but you'll be happy to know we are being led by you already.
Thank you, that's useful. On to agenda item 11, activities by property and FM team at LED Properties. Tim Child, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been just multitasking for the last minute or two. Did we jump over item 10 very quickly? Happy to go now. I just want to make sure I'm not jumping. Yeah, we've jumped over that. Okay, Put it straight on to me. Thank you. Okay, so
we'll come back to item 10. Apologies.
Sorry,
I did skip agenda 10.
Oh, okay,
but yeah, we'll do 11, then we'll do 10.
I didn't know if it was me.
No, just
right,
maybe
thank
an
you.
amateur.
So item 11, so activities by the property and FM team on LED properties. So I'd agreed at an earlier meeting to, it was probably some time ago actually, to introduce a recurring item whereby we update on the activities of the property and FM team on the LED properties. The LED work accounts for probably considerably upwards of 50% of the work of the property and FM team, property and facilities management team, probably nearer the sort of 75-80%. So it's a big chunk of that team's work. And therefore, I think probably it's important that we use these forums periodically to report on the main activities coming out of that team in respect of the LED assets. The proposal is to follow up with these reports every 6 months. In terms of sort of introducing the report, it's a joint report prepared by myself and also my colleague George Pineda Langford. He's our new principal building surveyor, started with us probably 4 or 5 months ago. But this is his first East Devon council committee meeting. So George is in on this meeting, and whilst I'll present a report and I'm presenting a report, any technical questions may well be directed towards George, I'm afraid. So there are 3 sections to the report. The first section, as I said, this being sort of the first of these reports, I've included some sort of introductory sort of guidance, I suppose, and context around what our landlord obligations are. So I've included that in paragraph 1.3 before listing in 1.4 what that actually means in practice, so the types of activities we undertake. I think just before I move on to the next parts of the reports, it's worth sort of, I suppose, just pausing really and sort of taking on board the scale of the work that we do within the council to support the LED properties. And I think this fits very, very neatly with the first main agenda item 8 today, around the leisure and built facilities strategy work scope. And I think it is really key for members to sort of appreciate that the scale of the East Devon resource that goes into managing these properties on a sort of day in, day out basis. So that's the first section. The second section of the report starts really, I suppose, from paragraph 1.5 onwards. And that section summarises the works that we've been doing and the main activities we've been doing over the last 3 months. You also have a background paper. It's the first background paper is a report that we brought to this forum. I think it was in one of the very first meetings late last year, setting out the future investment spend. And that report, I know, was one of the key bits of information I provided our leisure consultants with, as you'd expect. The second background paper is in table format, just listing in a bit more detail the planned and reactive works that we've undertaken in the last 3 months and that we have planned for the next 3 months. So the planned and reactive works are just one element of the works that the property and FM team do to support LED properties. And then finally, taking you almost to the very end of the report, paragraph 1.8, it was a good opportunity because of where we are with sort of timings at the moment, just to summarise what we have put forward in terms of capital bids for this year. So there are 12 bids in relation to LED properties, of circa £3 million in total. So it's a big round of capital bids for this year. So that's obviously going through the usual round of assessment now, but I thought it was just sort of flagging up really. And I suppose the key sort of takes from this report will hopefully be a sort of just reminding members of what our landlord responsibilities are in relation to the LED properties. Secondly, the scale of our day-to-day involvement, whether it be planned, reactive, whether it be compliance related. There's quite a lot of detail within the report around the extent of the compliance responsibilities of council. So I'm talking health and safety compliance here. And then finally, outside of all of that, and again, picking up on some comments that were made in an earlier agenda item regarding, for example, climate change and the need and opportunities to invest in our assets, that we sort of pick up through sort of the capital bid cycle. So I say I'm happy to answer any questions. Probably more correctly, George or I are happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any hands. Oh, I was about to got away with it, but it doesn't look like you have. Councillor Nasaran, please.
Sorry, yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Tim, that was a really good report, which clearly specified all our land responsibilities. Going back to item 1.8 that you touched on, you said there is the 12 bids, which is this 3 million. What do you hope to be successful with all 12 bids? And what happens if you're not sort of successful? Could you sort of maybe elaborate on that so that I can be a bit more clear on that? That'd be very helpful. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, interesting question. I would be delighted if, and Simon's listening in with a grin on his face, I would be delighted if all of those capital bids are approved. I'm not, maybe I'm doing myself an injustice. I'm not expecting all of them necessarily to be approved at this stage. But we have within the bids, we have tried to sort of prioritise when the works are needed and obviously the reasons for the works being needed. So there are sort of some degree of sort of prioritisation in that. But yeah, if we get all of them approved, then great. But I think probably the key message there is the scale of the bids that we've put in for LED properties this year dwarfs that which we put in previous years, and that's a reflection on the need to invest heavily in these LED assets, whether it be through capital works or whether it be for the sort of day-to-day reactive works.
Thank you, Tim. That was very thoughtful and very helpful.
Simon, did you want to add good news for this, or?
If I can, and I know the chair of the portfolio holders on the call as well, but in terms of, there will be an interesting debate at the budget setting capital allocation panel that meets on the 2nd of December, because as Tim says, there's quite significant bids being put forward for LED assets. And I think what members will have to consider at that meeting is obviously we're awaiting a strategy. So I think from those bids, some form of debate will have to take place in terms of priority of those bids and whether some of them should really be waiting until the strategy is in place first. But it's clearly set out in the bids what are health and safety issues, what are priority issues, and what are perhaps longer term investments. So that information will be there for members.
Thanks, Simon, for that expectation setting. I'll skip to Councillor Rowland because I feel like that's probably a relevant comment given your portfolio?
Well, almost word for word, Simon has just covered what I was going to say anyway, as I'll be chairing that meeting. So thank you, Simon. You put it much more succinctly than I probably could have done. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Councillor Miller, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm of the view that I think we should be waiting for our leisure strategy personally, except where we need to be putting money into things that we need to in terms of health and safety and protecting people, because that is obviously a mandatory thing for us really. But as for the other bids, I'm not on the panel, but I would feel uncomfortable as a councillor, not just because of our financial position, but I just think the leisure strategy needs to come first to identify priorities. My question was for Tim. Are you able to elaborate, Tim, on the there are 12 bids. I don't want you to go through every single one, or most of them or half of them, but what are the most major bids, and which sites do these relate to? Are you able to elaborate on that at all? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Can I bring George in? George probably has more detail than I do, having actively led on preparing those capital bids. George is in on the meeting, although he's currently on mute. I'm hoping this is a prompt to come off mute. No, okay, there's obviously a technical issue.
I'll
there.
carry on with Councillor.
Okay, sorry, George has come off mute now. So, George, can you elaborate on any detail, just to summarise high level the nature of the capital bids? Do they relate to health and safety compliance? Do they relate to sort of extensions? Those sorts of that sort of very high level opinion.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up a spreadsheet, but I have everything listed over there. But there is a few. For some reason, it's not coming up. I've got it here now. Just bear with me for a second.
George, would it be useful if I go to Councillor Young to just buy you some time and then come back?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Councillor Young, please.
Just to say, now £3 million is rather a lot of money, and now it would be very, as Councillor Miller has just said, it would be nice to know a sort of a breakdown on where this money is to be spent, or hoping to be spent, and obviously there are things that need to be done that will prevent more cost and more maintenance in the future, but that sort of work is imperative. But as a guide, what was the spend last year and what was the spend the previous year on that, if you've got that, Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, over the recent years, you'd have been looking at a couple £100,000, if that. I think last year there were no bids, capital bids relating to LED. The previous year it was probably in the region of £500,000. So this is a significant increase. It's largely come out of the work that we did around looking at our stock condition data, which was the first of the background papers attached to this report, which are a piece of work which we concluded late last year. Which has then fed into our work during this year to prepare those capital bids. So it's probably tenfold increase, I would say, on average. So it's significant.
Thank you for that.
Sorry to interrupt. So I just would like to know from officers' point of view, because the members of the budget setting and capital allocation panel haven't actually seen the detailed papers on this yet. Is it okay to actually be talking about the subject before members of that panel have even seen the details, so there's no predetermination taking place about those bids? I just would like advice before we, perhaps before George responds.
Yeah, I think Simon might come in on that. Can I just sort of, I think George and I've pulled up the spreadsheet now myself as well. So, but I'll probably leave it to George to lead on. But so we can just sort of generally summarise. But in terms of the purpose of the report in front of you today, it's not about capital bids. It's a general update on the activities of the team. It just seemed amiss not to reference the fact that a large part of that team's work had been involved in preparing those capital bids. But yeah, you're quite right, Councillor Rowland. This isn't the meeting to sort of to go through those capital bids and start assessing them. There's a separate mechanism for that. But I think in a minute, Simon might want to come in just to specifically answer your question as to what we can or can't say now. But and then between George and I, we will just very briefly summarise what they are. But I'm not proposing to go into the detail because, as I said, that's a separate forum.
Thanks, Simon. Are you able to add? I think it'll be good if we can see the exceptionally high level bit, but certainly no detail or anything today, just to get a feel of what's happened to get us to today, I guess, where we need to put forward these volume of bids need to be put forward.
Totally agree, Chair. I mean, the point being raised by Councillor Rowland's right in terms of the details will be coming forward to that panel, individual bid details in a lot of detail, using the word again, we'll be going through on that agenda, and it's for that group to then make their recommendations through to Cabinet, who will then make their recommendations through to Council in terms of the capital programme. I mean, there's no items in there that of any sensitivity, but having said that, the proper process is in terms of considering those bids is through the panel, Cabinet, Council, but a high level understanding by this group in terms of the likely investment levels and the types of expenditure, I think is quite useful.
Okay, so I have the spreadsheet in front of me.
I too, so I could.
George, did you want?
Yeah.
As I've introduced you, George, do you want to lead on this?
Okay. Let me just put my camera on so you can see me. There it is. Okay, basically, we've tried to group the work in different themes. Okay, and so they basically each theme basically is in all the leisure centres. So basically, we have a theme about ventilation in the leisure centres. Basically, these covers like extractor fans, air conditioning units, air handler units, and so on. It includes basically items that actually need doing and also improvements that would basically help in terms of energy savings and so on. We have another bit that it basically focuses on pool plant, okay, and mechanical. And basically this is also work that is urgently needed. For example, replacement of pumps, filters, and so on. So that needs to take place. We have another theme about sports halls, decorations, and basically the floors. There is one big one about fire risk assessment works. Okay, so we have fire risk assessments done in all the properties, and they highlighted quite a lot of issues that we need to deal with them fairly in good time. We have one that deals with particularly Exmouth Pavilion, and this covers basically refurbishment and improvement works. This is mainly asbestos removal, certain issues that we have with health and safety as well on that one. There is one that also for Exmouth Pavilion that covers the refurbishment to the catering areas, which I think is being mentioned in the report as well. What else? We have also another one that covers management systems for the pools, and basically these would improve the energy efficiency of the pools as well. There is one theme about energy efficiency, and basically what we try to do with that one is to get a consultant to look at the best energy efficiency solution for each building. And then once we have that, we would try to basically implement it. And And there is another one here that is just very specific to Exmouth swimming pool and is to do with the replacement of the cold water tank over there, which is basically leaking, and we need to replace it. Okay, so that is briefly, in general terms, what we've put forward, really. Okay, so if there is any questions on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, George. So I think that list sort of sums. So I suppose the general theme there is the capital bids relate to a degree, energy efficiency measures, to a degree, compliance, health and safety compliance, and to a degree, replacing equipment, replacing kit, plant in particular, whether it be water tanks, whether it be aircon units and similar, replacing those that need replacing. So this isn't about spending significant amounts of money improving, extending an existing leisure centre pending the outcome of a strategy. This is very much about keeping those leisure centres just operating. Now, clearly there are some things in there, and this we have included within the actual detailed bids around what works are absolutely time critical and some that are less critical. But I think you got the sort of general gist from George that these are not sort of things that are sort of, this isn't really sort of a long-term wish list. These are things that actually do need to be done, if not next year, then very, very soon. And I think that it's useful in terms of where we are with the strategy, because all of this needs to be factored in and sort of seen alongside. So hopefully that gives you sort of a good summary. And George, thank you very much for giving the detail. Thank you, George.
Thank you both. That's really good for setting the scene, I think. Councillor Arnott, please.
Thank you, Chair. Like Ben Elton, a little bit of politics, I'm afraid, can't be helped. This reminds me of our beloved council toilets and the report that we'll be discussing an overview day after tomorrow, where the council spent nothing for 7 years, 2014, didn't maintain what it had. And when I read the section about Exmouth Pavilion, and there is no criticism of officers involved in this whatsoever, it just struck me again. You have to maintain these places, particularly if they're by the seaside. You have to look after their exteriors, and we've known there have been problems at the Exmouth Pavilion as well. This £3 million, whichever committee this eventually comes to and comes through, is going to provide us with a huge problem. Let's just be very honest about that. And we are reaping the wind of artificially suppressed council tax for a key half decade a few years ago. We should have been investing in this throughout. Now, obviously, taking Tim's point, that criticism excludes, normal maintenance and normal things that you might expect to wear out, air conditioning and whatever. But in terms of the infrastructure of buildings and such, we've been underspending, and now really coming through in this report is some pretty shocking news that we may not be able to afford, because we know what's coming forward in our own financial projections over the next few weeks. So we can't pretend this is going to be easy. We're going to have to do a very good job of explaining to the people of East Devon how this situation has arisen. It looks as if we're going to have to step up to the plate one way or the other and do the work. But unless we're clear about how places like the Pavilion got into the, suboptimal condition that they're currently in, then we're not telling the whole story. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to come in, please? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm muted. Sorry. Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, I have to agree with Councillor Arnott. I mean, this does reflect there's been a lack of investment for some time, and COVID obviously hasn't helped. Just a couple of points I wanted to raise quickly. I've heard the term LEDs assets referred to a few times by officers. Just to bear in mind, these are the council's assets, not LEDs. We operate and manage them on your behalf. So these are investments into the council's assets. And the other issue is, and Tim alludes to this in his report, the school sites have a long-standing agreement going back to the 1980s that the council has to contribute 60% of the costs for these repairs, and the schools only have to contribute 40% of the cost. And I think, as Rachel Fowler is going to identify in the leisure strategy. This is, in a way, the council subsidising statutory education provision. So I do feel there's an opportunity when the report comes out to renegotiate or potentially renegotiate some of these contributions, which would potentially reduce the council's contribution and increase the schools. And that's something which I've certainly been advocating for some time. And I think will come to a head now, both with the leisure strategy and with some of the conversations we're starting to have with the academies. So that's a couple of points, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you. No, they are very good points, and points I think I've been alluding to myself in the past, that we do, obviously we're contractually obliged on these, but it is about legal maybe having a look and seeing how far we've painted ourselves into a corner back in the 80s. I don't see any other hands, so what I will do is actually follow the agenda this time and go back to agenda item 10, which I unfortunately skipped over a second ago, and that's the LED community support to Afghan refugees. Jamie, did you want to add anything to this report?
Only very quickly, Chair, just a bit of an update. I'm conscious of sort of the very last paragraph where take have been low, so we have had some further dialogue, and it's very much been around sort of the families getting children into schools, and I think there was two key blocks really. Getting children into schools was their priority. And also, I think what we take for granted in I suppose Western society of booking and accessing things through booking systems was just alien to these families. So we're working with them now and doing some introduction days to try and increase their usage of our sites. But other than that, happy to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's gratifying to see the support that's being given out to these people in their difficult situation at the moment. And you're absolutely right. The thing that I honed in on was about the low take up. But I understand there are valid reasons for that are being tackled now. I suppose what I'm interested in to know is, I mean, time flies by so quickly. They've been there a couple of months now, probably already. And the government scheme about resettlement doesn't really seem to have got off the ground yet. So I'm just intrigued to know whether there is any more news about that resettlement scheme and what is actually happening as well. I mean, you mentioned about the number of children involved here, about whether they are being schooled now. I don't know how many of the families involved, people, the adults that were interpreters that have got a good command of the language and are helping on that issue if there are any language difficulties. But if you can flesh out anything more about this, I'd be grateful, because obviously from a resettlement point of view, it's important as much as possible that these people are integrated and do find proper housing rather than being staying in a hotel for very long, which it in itself is going to cause issues for them, no doubt, from a mental health point of view as well, and finding some way that they know they're secure about their future in this country. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jamie, did you have any comment to be able to add around the context there? I appreciate it. Might be slightly out of your scope, being a Home Office commentary, but...
I think, I mean, the key for us, obviously, we're working with some colleagues at Devon County who are obviously the lead from that perspective. I think, what we're very much trying to do is drive, to try and support their mental health, as, I think Councillor just raised there through, I don't know, something like that. We've had a good take up now at Ocean, for example, through the soft play, which is fantastic. And I think we're very much just continue to focus on that as opposed to some of the wider challenges that some of these families have got.
Thank you. John, I can see your hand's gone up, so I'm going to shoot over to you because I feel like you might have some valid input.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's probably more one for me in relation to rehousing. I'll circulate perhaps a bit of a briefing note to members, but I think it's fair to say the Home Office have been slow to pick up on the actual resettlement. We've had a few properties put forward to us that we've in turn put forward to the Home Office, who are trying to match evacuees with accommodation. It has been very slow, and that's why I personally would like to thank LED for offering this, because one of the messages I was getting from colleagues at county is that the evacuees were getting bored, the children were getting a bit restless, and one of the things that we could offer, aside from help with clothing and feeding and other things, was the opportunity with a nearby leisure centre. And so I'm really grateful for LED to make this happen, and I hope people don't stay too long, but the take up improves. And I'll circulate an update in terms of the Home Office position to all members, if that's agreeable, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I think you made a good point there when you thanked LED for their work on this, and I could see how heads nodding away. So can we make sure that's minuted from the council to thank LED, or someone shout if I'm overstepping the mark? Councillor Miller, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm glad that's going to be minuted. The motivation for the idea actually came from me reading our LGA magazine, in which the chair of the LGA mentioned that one of the biggest challenges for the refugees, the Afghan refugees, having arrived unexpectedly, of course, because of what happened in Afghanistan over the summer and the US withdrawal. The biggest challenge was access to sport and leisure services. So Councillor Whibley, I wanted to thank him and put his name in the minutes as well, because he and I both worked quite hard. We both visited the hotel to identify what the issues were. Councillor Whibley more involved than myself, because he is the town ward member, and we both, and Joe sent an excellent email to LED to put forward a case for the refugees to be invited to use LED's facilities. And I just want, and again, to thank Jamie and Peter for taking that idea up and being so open and just putting forward such a huge offer. Because what we also found was, at the beginning, Directon's Town Football Club arranged for some football training for the refugees, but there are a lot of women and young girls that hadn't been able to get any exercise, and they were, as John Golding has said, they're hemmed into that hotel with no future idea about where they might go, and a lack of knowledge of the local area as well. So this has been extremely welcome. I note the low take-up, but I think those issues are now being ironed through. I think this is an excellent scheme, and I really hope that that participation continues to increase over the winter, where actually, indoor exercise is really really important for people. So yeah, just wanted to put in the minutes my thanks for Councillor Whibley. I think our thanks as a forum and as a council as well, because he really drove this forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. No, thank you for that background. And I think it's fair to say everyone who's been involved in this should be very proud of what they've achieved here. Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to endorse what everybody said. I'd like to thank LED for this very generous offer. To answer one of the questions about all the children in education, yes, all the children of school age now are in schools based in Exmouth, so they are now undertaking daily schooling. I'd just like to put my thanks in to Exmouth Town Council, because they have been one of the forefront people that have been involved on a daily basis still. I think what everybody has said, it was a very difficult position that we were put in less than 24 hours notice to try and help these Afghan refugees, and to actually now see the children, as I do, on a weekly basis, smiling, laughing and having fun on the beach, at the football club, or wherever they go, and seeing the adults out there in the town mixing with us locals and talking to us is really heartwarming. And I just think it's been an amazing adventure that we've been on, and I've just still struggled to come to terms with what they've had to go through to get to Exmouth. It's been a horrendous journey that they've taken, but I'm really hoping that the uptake will now pick up a bit, because obviously we've got winter coming on, and I think as Councillor Miller has said, with the wet weather and that coming on, they will be looking to go inside and play, and the adults as well. But sorry if I get emotional, but it's been an emotional journey. But I'd really like to thank LED for their offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gaza. Councillor Arnott, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. I can't top what's just been said by the previous speakers. I'd just like to make sure, if we can, that we do capture in the minutes all the people concerned. I'm really proud that this council has such an enlightened leisure and sports provider as LED, that it should have gone to all this trouble, and thank you profoundly and deeply. Also, because Councillor Gazzard is too modest to say that he is the Mayor of Exmouth, I'd like us to record our thanks to Exmouth Town Council in this as well. Also, on behalf of the district, particularly to Councillor Joe Wibley and all of our officers who've worked on this too. I think it's been a tragic international event, but our council with LED can feel proud of our response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Sarah, have you got the list of people, just because I wouldn't want anyone to be missed unexpectedly there, because there's been a lot of gratitude, I think, and it's rightly deserved.
Yes, I think we have that in the minutes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. The next items are Part B items. I don't have on my script the relevant phrase that goes along with it, so I'm hoping if I stall slightly, someone might be able to send that over to me, because I think
you don't have to say anything, Chair. It's bizarre because we're not making decisions, we're making sort of hints, aren't we, upwards. Then you just close this and start another one. I understand. Well, that's what I've been doing anyway.
Thanks for that. Sue, can you do the necessaries then, please?
Recommendations, right. Sorry, Chair, what are you asking me to do?
It's a Part B items now, isn't it? So
I see, sorry, yes. Yes, I forgot we'd skipped one item. Yeah, beg your pardon. Yes.